They said I wasn't their responsibility anymore. They threw me out the moment I turned 18, with nothing but a backpack and a warning never to come back. Years later, I walked into the same house, but this time, everything had changed. I still remember the day it happened. I had just turned 18, barely legal, still in high school, still unsure about what I wanted from life. That morning started off like any other, except something felt off. My mom avoided eye contact, and my dad's tone was colder than usual. By noon, they sat me down and said, "We think it's time you figure out life on your own." No argument, no discussion. Just like that, I was out. My so-called birthday gift was a duffel bag, packed without my knowledge, sitting by the front door. I was stunned. I wasn't a bad kid. Sure, I wasn't perfect. Nobody is, but I wasn't on drugs. I didn't skip school, and I respected the house rules. But they didn't care. They said I was too expensive to feed, that I wasn't contributing enough, and that it was time I became a man. They handed me $200 in cash and closed the door behind me. I remember sitting on the curb, that same front step where I used to wait for the school bus, and feeling like the entire world had turned its back on me. My friends didn't know how to help, and staying with them wasn't an option long term. I spent the next few nights sleeping in shelters, crashing on couches, and eventually found work at a gas station. It was humiliating. I went from being a regular high school senior to living like a stray dog, scrounging for survival. I wanted to hate them, and for a while, I did. But more than that, I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to build a life so successful, so untouchable, that they'd choke on their own arrogance. So I worked. Every damn day. I finished school while working night shifts. I taught myself web design through free online courses. I built small websites for local businesses, then graduated to e-commerce. Slowly, painfully, I started making money. Not much at first. Just enough to pay rent, then a little more. By 22, I launched my own digital agency. I hired freelancers, then full-time staff. My focus wasn't revenge, at least not at first. It was survival. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered their faces, the sound of that door slamming shut, the smug satisfaction in my dad's voice when he said, "You'll thank us for this someday." No, I wasn't going to thank them. I was going to outgrow them. I was going to rise so high they wouldn't be able to look me in the eye. The years passed. I expanded into marketing, then consulting. My business blew up when one of our campaigns went viral. Suddenly, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I moved into a luxury condo downtown. My company was profiled in a tech magazine. I bought a brand new BMW and treated myself to a real vacation for the first time in my life. But still, something inside me hadn't healed. Not until the day I saw the listing. It was a foreclosed property being sold at auction. I clicked the address out of curiosity, and my heart nearly stopped. It was their house. My childhood home. The same one they kicked me out of. The listing showed cracks in the walls, peeling paint, and a rusted gate, but I recognized it instantly. That little swing in the backyard. The cracked sidewalk I used to chalk draw on. My old window, second from the right. They had let it fall apart, and now it was up for grabs. I don't know what came over me, but I knew I had to buy it. Not to destroy it, not to live in it, but because that house was the symbol of everything I had overcome. I placed a cash bid, higher than the asking price. 2 weeks later, it was mine. No fanfare, no drama, just a quiet email confirming the deed had been transferred. And that's when the real twist began. Because I found out my parents were still living there, squatting illegally after the bank had repossessed it. Apparently, they'd fallen into debt after my dad lost his job and my mom got sick. They couldn't afford the mortgage, ignored the bank notices, and thought if they just stayed long enough, they'd be able to work something out. They had no idea I was the new owner. But I knew. And now, for the first time in my life, I held all the power. So I paid the property manager to deliver a letter. A formal, but polite, eviction notice. They had 30 days to leave. I didn't sign it with my name yet. I wanted them to stew in confusion, wondering who had bought the house, why they were being evicted, and where they were going to go next. The clock had started ticking, and I was watching from the shadows, preparing for the moment I'd reveal everything, not to get revenge, but to reclaim the dignity they stole from me all those years ago. They didn't know it yet, but their days in that house were numbered, and I was the one counting. After the eviction notice was delivered, I waited. I watched from a distance as they panicked, probably for the first time in a long time. A week later, I drove past the house. It looked even worse up close. Yard overgrown, paint flaking, windows clouded with grime. I parked down the street and observed as my father stepped out onto the porch with a beer in his hand, still wearing that same smug scowl he always had when talking down to me. But this time, there was panic beneath it. My mother came out behind him, clutching a piece of paper, the eviction notice. They were arguing. Loud. Angry. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I could read it on their faces. My father had always been the figure-it-out-later type, and it finally caught up to him. That night, I got a call from the property management company. They're requesting to speak to the owner, the agent said. Want us to pass along your contact? I said no. Not yet. I wanted to see just how far they'd squirm before they found out. 2 more weeks passed. They tried to file a dispute with the city, but there was no loophole. The foreclosure had gone through fair and legal. I had every right to claim the property. They tried reaching the bank. Too late. I watched their panic evolve into desperation. They started selling off furniture. I assumed they were trying to come up with a deposit for a rental somewhere else. But here's the sick irony. Most landlords don't rent to squatters with bad credit and eviction notices on their record. They were finding out the hard way what rock bottom really looked like. And that's when I made my move. I had the manager deliver a second letter. This one written by me, signed with my name. I kept it short. You kicked me out when I turned 18. Now I own this house. You have 7 days to vacate the property. This isn't revenge. This is closure. Your son. I wish I could have seen their faces. I didn't go in person. I wasn't interested in screaming matches or fake tears. But the next day, I got a call. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my mom's voice, shaky and almost unrecognizable. Please call me back. We didn't know. We were wrong. I'm sorry. Then came the texts. Dozens of them. Apologies, explanations, excuses. My father even tried calling himself, pretending like nothing had happened, asking if we could talk like adults. The same man who told me to figure it out on my own was now begging me for time and mercy. And maybe a part of me should have felt pity. But I didn't, because I had begged too. At 18, on the sidewalk outside that house, with no job, no money, and no plan, I had begged them not to do it. They didn't listen. So now I wouldn't either. 7 days later, they were gone. I showed up in person that morning, just to confirm it. The house was empty. Well, mostly. They'd left a few boxes behind. I walked through the rooms, remembering everything. My old bedroom, the creaky hallway, the kitchen where my mom used to make pancakes on Sundays, until she decided I wasn't worth feeding. It felt like closure, not just for what they did, but for who I used to be. I wasn't that scared, abandoned kid anymore. I was the owner, the man of the house. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, soaking in the silence. Then I picked up the remaining boxes and tossed them in the dumpster. I renovated the property, nothing fancy, just enough to make it livable again. Then I rented it out to a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the space, paid rent on time, treated it like home. And that's when it hit me. I didn't need revenge to win. I didn't need to scream or confront or tear them apart. All I needed was to prove that I could succeed in spite of them, that I could build a life from nothing and still come out on top. They didn't raise me. Life did. Pain did. And now, I had turned that pain into power. I don't know where they ended up, and I don't really care. Maybe they finally learned what it feels like to be tossed aside. Maybe not. But for me, this was never about punishment. It was about peace. And now, I finally had it. It had been months since they left, and not once did I feel tempted to reach out or check in, not because I hated them, but because I had finally detached. What once haunted me now felt distant, like a story someone else had lived. My tenants were thriving, The neighborhood was quiet, and the house, my house, stood as a symbol of survival and quiet victory. I used the rental income to buy another property, then another. I wasn't just some kid who got lucky. I had built something from the ashes of what they left me in. One day, I was at a local real estate networking event, and someone approached me with a familiar name. "Hey, do you know a John and Patricia Lane? They're trying to find housing, but they've been flagged on every landlord blacklist in town." I kept a straight face. "No idea who they are," I said calmly, even though the name stirred something old inside me. The person continued, "Yeah, sad case. Evicted. No one wants to touch them now. They're staying in a rundown motel out by Route 9. Shame." That night, I drove out to that motel, not to gloat, not to confront, just curiosity, maybe closure. I parked across the street and waited. After half an hour, I saw them. My father looked 10 years older than I remembered, slouched, unshaven, defeated. My mother looked thinner, like the years had drained her from the inside. They walked together in silence, carrying a bag of groceries like it weighed their whole world. I didn't cry. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just realized in that moment how different our lives had become. They were stuck in a cycle they created. I had broken mine. I drove away quietly and never returned. Years passed. I expanded my real estate business, started mentoring kids who had rough starts like me. I'd show them that pain doesn't have to be permanent, that abandonment can be the beginning of something powerful if you decide it will be. One day, while doing paperwork in my office, I got a letter. It was handwritten and old-fashioned. No return address, just my name. I opened it carefully. Inside was a short note, shaky handwriting, definitely my mother's. "We were wrong. We know we don't deserve anything from you, but we wanted to say we're proud. You turned into the man we failed to raise. I hope you found peace." Mom. I stared at the letter for a long time. There was no request for money, no demand to reconnect, just acknowledgement, late, but real. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I never wrote back. Some wounds don't close with words. Some don't need to. The house still stands. The couple I rented it to eventually bought it from me, and they send me a Christmas card every year with a photo of their daughter growing up in what used to be my prison, now transformed into a home. That's the beauty of life. It gives you the power to rewrite your story. I never got the love I wanted from my parents, but I gave myself everything they couldn't. Stability, purpose, pride. And in the end, I didn't just return as their landlord. I returned as a man they could never control again. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon for more powerful revenge stories that'll keep you thinking long after they end.